Prime Ticket, the biggest thing is because they show the Lakers, the best.
This is the UCLA Bruins warm-up show, brought to you by your Toyota dealer, who has a full line of 1986 trucks and vans. More power, more payload to do more work. Who could ask for anything more?
From Marina Del Rey, California, welcome to the UCLA Crew Classic for the Maury Grossman Cup. This will be one of the most memorable and significant crew races ever held in Los Angeles, as the most famous crew in the world, Oxford University of Great Britain, challenges UCLA and the University of California at Berkeley. Hi everybody, I'm Bob Miller, and this will be only the second time in 157 years of collegiate competition that we have had an English-American boat race on this side of the Atlantic. And we are very pleased to have with us today David Grant, the crew coach at Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa, California, a coxswain formerly at Orange Coast College and in Sweden, and an assistant coach of the U.S. crews in the Olympics in 1984 in Los Angeles. David, welcome to Prime Ticket.
It's a pretty exciting day, I think.
I was going to say, I'm sure for you and all crew enthusiasts in Southern California, this is an extremely exciting day. Tell us a little bit about crew. It is the oldest intercollegiate sport and one that still to this day remains pure amateur.
It is that. Rowing in this country started with the race between Harvard and Yale. That was the first intercollegiate competition in the early 1850s. And it's a unique sport. It's probably the most pure amateur sport around. Bob, it's probably also unique in the sense that almost no one has ever done it before they come to college. It's an experience where people begin all over when they become freshmen, and it's we find often people attracted to rowing because they've done everything in basketball or football or track or water polo, and they're ready for a whole new experience, and this is it.
Now, it takes tremendous physical endurance and dedication, does it not?
It does indeed. An oarsman, it's not unusual for an oarsman to row 15 to 18 miles a day, and every time he puts that blade in the water, he moves between 50 and 80 pounds, depending upon how hard he's rowing. And he'll do that for every single stroke, and he might take 800 or 900 strokes in a day. So he does a lot of physical work.
Now, fans are arriving, and throughout the day there are going to be somewhere around 15,000 fans here, and we'd like to know a little bit about the significance of these races we're going to see today. Most of them will be dual races between Cal and UCLA, and then the big feature with Oxford will be the final race.
Yes, exactly. The UCLA program is trying for an insurgent comeback against Cal after last week at the San Diego Crew Classic, in which Cal really dominated the situation pretty well. And I suspect Cal will find themselves in for some serious competition with UCLA today.
What about Oxford this year? They lost in their race that they have each year, the big race to Cambridge in England.
Yes, after 10 years, certainly, of dominating that race, it was a bit of a blow for Oxford to lose that one to Cambridge. But no complaints. They've had 10 wonderful years, and certainly a credit to Dan and the Oxford crew, and they'll do well. But they're a bit out of their element here, although the weather would seem to put them right at home. They're a bit out of their element in the sense that they're used to 4 and 5 mile races. So this race, being a mile and an eighth, is a completely different strategy. So a little tougher for Oxford today.
Well, we'll see what the day unfolds for Oxford and the Cal and UCLA crews. And we'll be back here at Marina Del Rey with more of our pre-race comments in just a moment. Classic at Marina Del Rey, California, and we are going to be seeing a variety of races today: men's lightweight novice eights, women's novice eights, men's lightweight junior varsity 8, and the men's heavyweight novice 8s. In addition, we'll be seeing the men's heavyweight freshman 8s, men's heavyweight second varsity 8s, the men's lightweight varsity 8s, and the women's varsity 8s, also the men's varsity 4s, and the feature race of the day, the men's heavyweight varsity 8s for the Maury Grossman Cup. And that, of course, that race will include Oxford University from Great Britain, Cal, and UCLA. David Grant, tell us a little bit about those various categories that we're going to see today. We've seen lightweight, heavyweight, novice. Give us a little bit more information on those categories.
Right. The novice would be a first-year oarsman, not necessarily a freshman. Might be a sophomore or a junior or senior, somebody who got excited about rowing, seeing it on a thing such as this, and so it's his first year or her first year of rowing. The lightweight means that the whole crew would average 155 pounds, no one over 160, and heavyweight anything beyond that.
So I would imagine as the day goes on, depending upon who is in the boat, we're going to see a different quality of racing as far as experience goes.
Yes, quite right. Understandably, the earlier races with the beginners, you're going to see some racing which is not quite the quality that they will see after they have rowed for a year or two. So by the time we get to the final race with Cal and Oxford and UCLA, it'll be pretty impressive rowing.
Do you have a favorite today as far as a school that you think might dominate these races?
Well, I have a couple. One is UCLA is my alma mater, so I'd like that, but probably not the case. And Cal is coached by Tim Hodges, an old friend and a former oarsman at Coast, and so I'd like them to do well, and I know some of the Oxford people, so I'd like to see them all do well. I suspect Cal, with their performance last week in San Diego, has to be considered as pretty heavy favorite.
Well, we'll find out. It's the UCLA Crew Classic here at Marina Del Rey, California. And we will be right back with more pre-race comments right after these messages. Winning crews today, David, give their shirts, or the losers give their shirts to the winners, are going to get a little cold today because that wind is really whipping up out here. What effect might these conditions have on these races?
It does make a considerable difference, Bob. The breeze coming right down the creek will favor the crews that maybe are a little lighter, a little quicker. In any case, the times will be lower. They'll be much faster on the course, and certainly requires a little better watermanship in terms of handling boats and handling oars. There's a little bit of chop out here, not serious, but the times will be fast.
Well, it should be an outstanding day of crew racing here at Marina Del Rey, California, the UCLA Crew Classic, and we'll be back in just a moment.
This has been the UCLA Bruins Warm-Up Show, brought to you by Toyota, who reminds you to get more from life. Buckle up. Who could ask for anything more? Now sit back and enjoy exciting Bruins action coming up next on Prime Ticket.
Western's family of companies with over $24 billion in assets and over 600 offices. Great Western is a new brand of banking. By Avis Rent-A-Car, with over 70 locations in Southern California and Las Vegas to serve you. Send Avis and SOS. And by Maxell, manufacturers of premium audio and video tape. Maxell, the tape for sophisticated equipment.
From Marina Del Rey, California, Ballona Creek, it's a day of exciting crew races in the UCLA Crew Classic for the Maury Grossman Cup. The feature race of the day pits Oxford University of Great Britain against UCLA and the University of California, Berkeley. Hi, everybody. This is Bob Miller. Joining us today, David Grant, crew coach at Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa, California. And David, being a crew coach, what preparation have the crews gone through leading up to the big events today?
Well, many months, certainly, of a lot of very intense work, but particularly in the last week or so, a bit of tapering in the last 2 or 3 days. You know, the crew's motto is you can't taper too soon, but the coach says no, you got to work a little harder than that. So early in the week, a lot of aerobic; middle of the week, a lot of anaerobic, that is to say, a lot of sprinting work, and toward the end of the week, a bit of taper to give themselves a chance to catch their breath.
Now, of course, the feature race of the day, as we said, pits Oxford University coming over here to the United States to row against UCLA and Cal. Let's talk a little bit about Oxford. They got beat by Cambridge this year. What situation is their program in this season? Is it kind of a down year for them?
A bit of a surprise, but I think, you know, after you dominate things for 10 years, the end has got to come sometime. And Very different racing for them here than home at Oxford. The distance here, it's a whole new ball game for them, a whole new race for them to be sprinting over 2,000 meters, racing at 35, 36, 37 strokes a minute, as opposed to a good deal lower cadence at home. So very different race, and that's what makes today pretty exciting, because we really haven't seen them in these kinds of conditions.
Now at home they row in England about 4.5 miles. So how do they adjust to this in their training?
Well, they've had really only about a month to do that, and they need actually a little less than that. And they probably need 3 or 4 months to really do that training properly. It's a very different approach to rowing, to be sprinting 1.1 miles versus rowing the 4 or 5 miles, and they will struggle a bit with that, I suspect.
So Cal and UCLA would have a little bit of an advantage here.
Certainly, and certainly Cal has an ability to sprint very high, as they proved last week, and probably Cal will show that off, I suspect, pretty clearly this afternoon.
Well, we'll be back with our first race of the day. Classic at Marina Del Rey, California, right after these messages. With University of California in the lane at the bottom of the screen, and at the top of the screen will be the UCLA Bruins. The start, David, so very important, I think, probably just from the fact of getting a good start and perhaps putting an imposition on the other team. For the University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA Bruins in the bow, Nico Whitmire. Rowing number 2, Mike Farrell. Number 3, Brett Waterman. Number 4 will be Greg Shooter. In seat 5, Duncan Orrell-Jones. In the 6th seat, Mark Hogan. Rowing 7, Joe Brazovic. The stroke is Russ Logan, and the coxswain is Trish O'Keefe. That's the UCLA crew. For the California Golden Bears in the bow, Paul Wazin. In the 2 seat, Carter Mudge. Number 3, Jeff Widener. Number 4, Sean Mulligan. In the 5th seat, Andy Rogers. In the 6th, Jim Penny. Rowing 7, Jeff Rose. The stroke is Chad Smiley, and the coxswain is Vicki Levin. They are just past the 500-meter mark, David, and Cal about half a length ahead, it looks like, from our angle.
Quite right, Bob. They're about 33 and a half, 34 strokes per minute, and looking very smooth, leading by about a half a length. Stretching it out a little bit now. Obviously taking a 10 here and moved out to a little open water.
University of California Golden Bears in the light shirts as they roll by the UCLA boathouse here on Bologna Creek, and now threatening, David, to open up some open water.
They look very comfortable there at 33, 34. Good spacing. Well on their way here, almost halfway through the race, to establishing some dominance here.
Right at this point, would this be the point where they are lengthening out and then would get ready for some type of a sprint at the finish? They're coming up on 1,000 meters here, just about halfway through the race.
That's correct. They'll hang on to this rating right up to 1,800 meters before they take the rate up for the finish. But staying very comfortable at 33, 34. UCLA about the same.
So UCLA now, as we look at the UCLA crew, are they in a pretty good position right now to...
UCLA having a little difficulty, Rob, right as I'm looking at them here with the steering. They've wandered off the course quite a lot. They were very close to the rocks, about 500 meters, and you can see now they're about the center of the channel. They give away a little space by moving around like that.
Now UCLA calling for a hard 10 right now, so their coxswain is calling for them to sprint for the next 10 strokes. Is that essentially it?
Almost. They don't really take the rate up there predictably. They would presumably row the boat harder, row with more energy into the oar rather than taking the rate up. They would save taking the rate up for the finish.
And where would they start that finish now? They will be just about coming upon 1,500 meters in this 2,000-meter race.
Right. They'd be smart to hang on for another 2.5 to 300 meters before they take their rate up. A little too early at 1,500. At this stage, they're getting into an anaerobic, that is to say, without oxygen, and there's a heavy oxygen debt at this point in rowing, and they'll delay taking the rate up until they're really right with 2:50 to go.
David, as we watch now, California in the light shirts leading, and UCLA coming on now. What do you look for in the catch? That is where the oars enter the water.
Well, certainly the critical thing is that all blades enter and exit at exactly the same moment. Cal doing that quite well. UCLA doing well too, actually. But certainly all the blades have to enter at the same moment, need to exit as cleanly as possible.
About a one-length lead right now, nearing the finish, as the University of California leading UCLA in the men's novice 8 heavyweight race. The race finish line is near Lincoln Boulevard as they race from west to east here on Ballona Creek.
They have a little following breeze with them, and the tide's moving in with them too, so the race is generally going to be a little shorter than it perhaps normally would.
Both boats at 35 strokes per minute right now as they near the finish. Still about a one boat length lead for Cal.
That's
on
right.
The right-hand side of your screen. 36 meters left to go in the race, and still both the boats, Cal at 35 strokes a minute and UCLA at 36 right now.
That's correct, and you quite rightly pointed out early on that Cal got that length lead about 500 meters when they took their power 10 and moved very quickly there right by UCLA, and they've hung on to that.
Both strokes, or both boats now at 36.5 strokes a minute, and there you can see the pretty good angle on the lead that the University of California has on UCLA. Looked a little closer, but there's the finish line, about a one-length win for Cal, it looked like.
Yes. Good performance for UCLA, though, not far behind. Good performance for UCLA.
So the University of California Golden Bears, the winners of the men's novice 8 heavyweight race here on Ballona Creek, and as usual, David, you can see the exhaustion at the end of that race.
These novices are not necessarily freshmen. They are simply they are men whose first year of rowing this is. They may be sophomores or juniors or even seniors who were attracted to rowing and decided to get involved in it and then turned out. So all novices are equal. They've never raced before.
So the winner in this race in the novice 8 heavyweight, the University of California Golden Bears. And we'll be back with more races at the UCLA Classic in just a moment. Side of the UCLA Classic as the California Golden Bears take on the UCLA Bruins, and of course later on one of the most famous crews in the world, Oxford, will be rowing against California and UCLA. But our next race will be the men's freshman 8 heavyweight race, and the UCLA Bruins will feature in the bow Craig Webster, rowing number 2 Steve Peterson, number 3 Mike Stralka. In the 4 seat will be Jeff Kaltrider, 5 Brad Wieners, number 6 Richard Van Wy, number 7 Mark Batchelder. The stroke is Mark Curzon, and the coxswain David Watt. The race, David Grant, just getting underway, starting from west to east, and the start of the race, as we have mentioned, is where a lot of the strategy goes on, I would imagine.
Exactly right. Both crews off to a very high start, 43, 44 strokes a minute. And they'll continue that, Bob, for about 30 strokes before they finally settle down to 35, 36.
In the University of California Golden Bear boat in the bow, Mike Miller. Number 2 will be John Starrett. The 3 seat, Brian Milder. Number 4, Doug McClary. In the 5th seat, Canis Ulrichs. In the 6th, Forrest Patterson. 7th seat will be Mike Schoback. The stroke is Mike Howells, and the coxswain Gary Tan. Is that start preset, the strokes that they're going to maintain?
Yes, the whole crew would know that, Bob, just as the plan would be to go 25 or 30 strokes before settling down, and the whole crew would know that, so there are no surprises there. Both crews looking very nice, rowing very nicely here.
approaching the 500-meter mark right now. This is a 2,000-meter race, so they're a quarter of the way through. And
Cal leading by about a length. Cal here with the blue and gold blades, white shirts with blue stripes.
now the stroke sits right in front of the coxswain, and would you say that he is the most important person in the boat? I suppose everybody's important.
That's exactly right. Everybody's important. He gets the commands directly from the coxswain here, and there's a certain amount of strategy exchange that goes on between them, and certainly the coxswain and the stroke are key factors in the boat's strategy. Both boats rowing very nicely here. UCLA in the blue with the gold stripe.
This is the men's freshman 8 heavyweight, and they are passing the UCLA boathouse right now. And David, you're right. The Cal boat just slightly ahead, not even by half a length.
Just a little less than that. Both boats rowing very nicely, clearing their puddles well. There's unfortunately a Cal boat here on the course, but they're not going to interfere with those.
Now, you mentioned clearing their puddles, and we can see the puddles, of course. And what do you mean by that term, clearing the puddles?
Well, if you look on the port side, that is to say the left side looking forward, the bowman, when he takes a stroke, he creates a puddle. And by the time the next stroke is taken, the stroke, who is the furthest back toward next to the coxswain on the left side facing forward, he needs to clear that with his blade, so that when his blade goes in, it hits firm water rather than bubbled water.
Now, as you mentioned, if it hits bubbled water, it's getting a lot of air and not much push forward.
That's right. It's like sailing in disturbed water. It's the same problem. You need clean, clear water to effect a good catch.
At this point in the race, and they are just about halfway through right now, 1,000 meters, and it looks like from our angle, Cal is maintaining their lead about half a boat length. If, as this crowd watches from the banks here, and I think it's one of the bigger crowds they've had here for UCLA rowing. Of course, they're all waiting for the Oxford crew to row against Cal and UCLA. As they watch these rowers, if they're rowing more smoothly, does that mean they're taking less strokes, or is there a way that you can tell that during the race?
Yes, you can. There's the best solution in terms of racing the boat is to take the fewer number of strokes per minute as you can, and thereby conserve your energy. So the idea being, if you could row at 33 or 34 strokes a minute and maintain your relationship with the other crew, then at the finish you would have more space to take the rate up. That is to say, you could go up to 36 or 37, getting more strokes in and thereby increasing the speed of the boat. But you want to be as conservative as you can early on.
The orange marker they're coming up to now is the 1,500 meters, so they got 500 meters left to go.
Correct. And they'll delay that sprint for the finish for another couple hundred meters. And then they'll both begin to take the rate up. They're close enough now that they can strategize with each other a little bit. The coxswain's looking back and forth at one another, trying to determine when the other's starting their sprint. So they watch each other, coxswains watch each other pretty carefully here. Strokes don't have any time for that.
Now the coxswain is actually steering the boat, also staying in the lane, is that right?
That's correct. And both coxswains here doing a very good job. Well apart, keeping an eye on each other, steering right straight down the course. A foot out of the lane, of course, means a foot back. So it's critical that the coxswain steer. And he has a very small rudder with which to steer, less than a foot long.
So they are nearing the finish of this race, the men's freshman 8 heavyweight race between UCLA and Cal. And the head official is in that launch right in the middle. The head official is Julian Wolf. Now, what does he watch for?
Well, he will certainly warn the coxswains if they get out of their lane. And if there's any danger of that, he'll wave a flag indicating to the stroke to move over, and the stroke will tell the coxswain, because of course the coxswain can't see the referee.
Now in the other launch, Jeff Strand is the race announcer actually out on the water. He's telling people back here and informing us when we can hear him of just how far apart the boats are. Now we're coming up to the finish. You can see that the Cal boat has maintained their lead and looks like they're going to win this men's freshman 8 heavyweight.
Very nice. There they are across, Cal across first.
So the University of California Golden Bears have won the men's freshman 8 at about 34 strokes a minute, I believe is what Jeff Strand said. So California the winner by about a length, did he say?
That's correct.
So in the men's freshman 8 heavyweight division, California Golden Bears are the winners. And we'll be back with more races of the UCLA Classic in just a moment.
Right now,
on April 1st, a celebrity boat race was held here at Marina del Rey, featuring some famous movie actors and television stars. The event was billed as the April Fool's Mock Celebrity Boat Race. Well, it was on April 1st, and it was filled with celebrities, but their tenacity for boat racing was anything but mock. The British were well represented. Dudley Moore was there, more for moral support than rowing support. Here, screen actress Susan George is being interviewed by Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Christopher Cazenove, better known as Ben Carrington on the TV hit Dynasty, put in an appearance. There's Simon McCorkindale, a veteran actor whose recent success has come on TV's Falcon Crest. Jenny Agutter of An American Werewolf in London fame. What a lucky wolf. And Christina Pickles from St. Elsewhere, who was given personal attention by a Bruin oarsman. And the lovely Emma Sams of TV's Dynasty and the Colbys. The American side was given silent support by popular mime Richmond Shepard. Veteran actor Doug McClure was ready for the big race as he inspects things. And versatile actor Clabe Hartley is seen on The Fall Guy and the A-Team. And from Dance Fever, looking for some boat fever, is popular Adrian Zemed. Well, now the time has arrived to do what everyone came for, and that's to row a boat. The UCLA oarsmen will have the dubious honor of carrying the shell to the marina waters, and the oarsmen will also be sitting in both shells with the celebrities as they attempt to move the boat. UCLA oarsmen, however, will not be actually rowing, only giving advice and encouragement. The oarsmen, in regimented fashion, lower the British shell into the marina, saving countless pulled muscles, I'm sure. John Callahan of TV's Falcon Crest has made it. He'll be rowing for the American side. That will make the American team Adrian Zemed, John Callahan, Doug McClure, and Clabe Hartley, obscured there by an unknown head. For the British side, it'll be Jenny Agutter, Simon McCorkindale, Chris Cazenove, and Susan George, all getting set for the big April Fool mock boat race. The British team pulls away from shore, and hopefully they're going in the right direction. And the American contingent also looking for the right lanes to row in. With everyone anxiously looking on, the race is underway. Yes, the race is underway, folks. This is not super slow motion. This is the actual race. The Americans look as if they're trailing, but our camera angle is kind of obscure. The Americans are actually leading at the end and hang on for victory. Now that, by the way, was actually the second race. The British, who won the first one, accepted a challenge for the second race. But it was all in good fun anyway, as these good sports get the feeling of what it's like to be an oarsman or oarswoman for an afternoon. And what would a victory be without the traditional dunking of the coxswain? This is Bob Miller with David Grant, the crew coach at Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa, California. We are at the UCLA Classic here at Bologna Creek in Marina del Rey, where in the final race of the day, one of the most famous crews in the world, the Oxford Blues, will be rowing against UCLA and California. The next race that we're going to be covering will be the men's second varsity 8 heavyweight race. And David, as you mentioned, as we go along now, the ability of these crews is going to get much better because we're getting into those more experienced oarsmen.
That's quite right. The crews that we saw earlier, the novice and the freshmen, are in their first year of rowing. And these oarsmen have been with the crew for 2 or 3 or 4 years. And you'll see the quality of rowing improve appreciably.
David, this is a less than ideal California day, and all of a sudden now lately the wind has really kicked up. Now, what effect will that have on the races?
I hope this telecast doesn't go beyond California. It will make quite a difference, actually. Not so much in degree of difficulty of rowing because the Bologna Creek is so calm here, but the wind at their backs, rather at the coxswain's back, indicates that the time will be much, much faster than it normally would. A crew race normally being roughly 6 minutes, for these better crews probably going to be a little less than that.
What about pre-race strategy? I've noticed in the Oxford-Cambridge race, one crew was all set to go, and the other was still warming up, kind of some gamesmanship before the start of a race.
There is a certain amount of that, although with these college crews, most will have their warm-up plan established well in advance. And the crews will have every opportunity to fulfill their warm-up time. They have 35, 40 minutes, and they know what their game plan is. They will try to be the last on the blocks, last at the starting gate, so that they don't have to sit there very long.
Now, what exactly do they do now as they roll down to the start? Are they getting, of course, getting muscles loose, getting lungs in shape for the fast start?
Really, just particularly on a cold day like this, the coxswain will keep them moving the whole time, so they never have a chance to sit. They'll do some low stroking stuff just to get the boat settled down, and then as they get away and get off on their own a bit, they'll do some high stroking stuff to get the heart moving and oxygen pumping through the system pretty well. And they'll do a couple of practice starts before they get underway so that they have a good chance to feel fully warmed up. And that means about a 35 or 40 minute warm-up.
Well, we are just moments away from the men's second varsity 8 heavyweight as the boats go down to the start with the start of the race in just a moment.
April showers may come your way, they'll bring the sports that bloom on Prime Ticket nearly every day. If it's April, it must be the playoffs as the world champion Lakers make a run at their second straight NBA championship. Racing highlights will continue from Santa Anita, then thunder to the finish line from Hollywood Park beginning later in the month. Prime Ticket continues great volleyball coverage as the USA's men's and women's teams take the hardwood against France and Japan. April means solid collegiate sports action again. Live, exciting baseball action from Fullerton, USC, and Hawaii. Tennis from UCLA. Track and field intrigue. Even crew featuring UCLA, Cal, and Oxford. April promises to be a month filled with sports explosiveness as Prime Ticket again delivers sports the way you want them. In April, Prime Ticket will shower you with sports, and you'll have no regrets when you set your cable dial to the Prime Ticket television network.
The NBA playoffs with the NBA World Champion Lakers here on Prime Ticket.
The start of the races today will be, or have been taking place near a pedestrian bridge near the ocean side of Bologna Creek. Now, Bologna Creek runs parallel with the main channel of Marina del Rey, and then the races go from west to east. So David Grant, as you mentioned, the wind is at their back. Now, what about tide conditions in a body of water as narrow as this?
It does make a bit of a difference, and so the strategy changes slightly as the race is done a good deal more quickly. If you plan for a 6.5-minute race, well, there's one strategy. If you're planning for an under 6-minute race, there's something of a different one. But they'll get through the first 500 meters in something less than a minute 25 seconds, and therefore, if you multiply that times the 4 quarters of the race, they ought to be here in well under 6 minutes.
Now, what are the moments like just before the start? The shells are down there now, all ready to go. What type of strategy is employed?
They back them into a stake boat so that each of the crews is held by someone in a small boat that's anchored there. And they'll all begin at the same moment, of course, when the referee says, "Et vous prêt, partez." He has his hand up, as you can see, because that indicates that he's not quite ready. When his hand goes down, that's the coxswain. When his hand goes down, that indicates that he is ready. And the same will be true of the UCLA boat. You can see them.
So this is race number 7 of the day, men's second varsity 8 heavyweight race. We are not televising all of the races today. They have had several starting early this morning, and of course it will culminate with the main event of the day, and that is the Oxford crew racing in the final race of the day against UCLA and the University of California.
Coxswain has hands down now, so indicating they're ready. No, there's a hand up. There they go. The coxswain would have his hand or her hand up to ensure that, in fact, the shell is aimed straight down the course.
And they have started out UCLA at 43 strokes, so is that about normal for a start?
Fairly typically, yeah. For quality crews such as these 2 crews, they're going to be at 43, 44 strokes a minute for the first 25, 30 strokes. They'll gradually shift gears down to 35, 36 strokes as they come by the boathouse.
University of California crew is in the near lane, and in the left-hand side of your screen is the UCLA Bruin crew.
Crew is quite a ways apart here now. The coxswain steering off the side of the course, so that gives them a good reference point rather than steering off of each other.
For the UCLA Bruins, in the bow in this boat is Vince Casares. Rowing in seat number 2, David Stubbs. In the 3rd seat is Eric Stroh, followed in number 4 by Guy Riza. In the 5th seat, Robert Bermeo. In the 6th is John Wright. Rowing number 7 is Frank Buckley. The stroke is David Webb, and the coxswain is Jason Tint. So we're coming upon 1/4 of the race completed, 500 meters, and really a very close race.
Very close indeed. Cal appearing to have just a slight edge here. It's a little deceiving from the angle.
For the University of California team, which has that slight lead, in the bow is Bob Knapp. Rowing in seat number 2 is Ken Muller. In the 3rd seat, Steve Detlinger. In the 4th, Andrew Hewitt. Rowing number 5 is Sam Hobbs. Number 6, Carl Johnsons. Number 7, Kevin O'Brien. The stroke is Joe Krapka, and the coxswain is James Hoppenfeld.
Very close race here. They look really just dead even as they pass the boathouse at 7:50. UCLA may be being up just a seat.
Coming right past the UCLA boathouse right now, and they are just about neck and neck right here, and they are approaching not quite to 1,000 meters or halfway through the race. What would their stroke be right about now?
Both about the same, about 34.5, 35.
Now both coxswains right now calling for high 10s.
That's exactly right. You could see the coxswains exchange looks there. They looked. One was waiting to see which one would take it first. The idea being that you hold off the other crew as long as you can, and then you take your 10 and attempt to break the other crew. All right, UCLA has moved up there to get a seat or 2 on Cal.
So the UCLA Bruins right now halfway through the race, the 1,000 meter mark, with about a 2-seat advantage. So that's a close race.
Yes, it is close, but still a pretty serious advantage for UCLA.
California has moved their stroke up now according to Jeff Strand, who is the announcer out in the boat, to about 34 and a half.
Yes, they'll need to go up a bit. They can't afford to let UCLA get any further away than they currently are, so they need to go up a bit. UCLA rowing very nicely here, very nicely. Oarsmen make it look so easy. It's a beautiful sight, and they make it look, they're working awfully hard. Every time they move that blade through the water, they move roughly 90 pounds, each oarsman individually. So there's a lot of work being done there.
One way to identify the crews would be the color of the blades, is that right?
That's correct. UCLA with the white blades with the blue and gold stripe, and Cal with the dark blue. Very close race. Good quality rowing.
34 strokes a minute right now, nearing the 1,500 meter mark. So they've got that orange ball is the 1,500 meters. They've got 500 meters to go right now.
That's right, and both will hold off their sprint as long as they can, waiting for the other until just the other takes the sprint, and then they'll move.
Is there an ideal point at which to take that? You can't wait forever.
That's right. You don't want to let the other crew get away from you, so you want to anticipate what they're going to do, and with about 250 meters to go, they'll start up. Not any later than that. What they don't want to do is start to sprint too soon and then be coming back down flat at the finish.
About 400 meters to go, and still a close race with UCLA slightly ahead. Both crews are still at 34 strokes per minute. Rowing toward the Lincoln Avenue Bridge on Bologna Creek and nearing the end of this men's second varsity 8 heavyweight. And both crews are still dead even and now at 35 strokes per minute.
That's correct, and it'll climb from there up to 36, 37. Both crews rowing very nicely here. Catches all together, finishes together. Very aggressive finish for UCLA, a much improved finish over their performance at San Diego.
California nearing the end has a very slight lead, but not even a seat.
No, very close. As we see them cross here, it's going to be very close.
Coming up
Cal
to the
has
finish
just
line.
a seat or so, 2-seat lead.
Cal in the lighter jerseys, and
there they're across.
And the University of California.
Cal boat, I'm pleased to say, had an Orange Coast oarsman in the bow and an Orange Coast oarsman stroking it, but the UCLA boat had a Coast oarsman in there as well.
So the University of California Golden Bears are the winners of the men's second varsity 8 heavyweight division. And it was very, very close at the finish. In fact, all the way down the course.
Yeah, very fine performance for both crews, particularly UCLA, I think, which bounced back from a not so good showing the week before. Cal here rowing very aggressively. Very nice finish.
So we will be back to the UCLA Crew Classic at Marina Del Rey, California. Our same-day coverage in just a moment. Sophisticated changes in racing shells that are used in these boat races. We want to give you an inside look into just what these racing vehicles are all about and how they're operated. UCLA's varsity coach Jim Sims now takes us on an instructional excursion of the racing shell.
This boat is an 8-oared racing shell. It's the premier racing shell that the colleges across the country and around the world compete in. This one was named after Gary Ballinger, who was a UCLA alum in the 1940s and one of our best supporters. He was a coxswain on the UCLA crew at that time. The boat's about 55 feet long from the tip of the bow to the end of the stern. And the oarsmen, all 8 of them and the coxswain, sit in line and tie into this central area that runs down through the center of the boat. As you can see, it's just about 1.5 feet wide at its widest point, and these strange-looking apparatus that attach to the sides are called riggers. The oarsman, when he gets in the boat, puts his oar in the oarlock. Let's walk down here and take a look at the number 2 seat. He puts his oar in this oarlock. This thing twists, and then he gets it all the way open. The oarlock opens up. He slides his oar in this way. The oar goes on out, fastens this back down and tightens the keeper, and that keeps the oar from coming out during the race. And then he sits down in this seat, which you can see is a sliding seat. A lot of people think that boats are rowed with the arms in the back, and the arms in the back play a role, but primarily a boat is rowed with the legs. The oarsman ties into these boot stretchers. They're actually a very tight-fitting pair of running shoes that are fastened to the boards connected to the boat. And when he takes his stroke, he's up here with his knees high, and then he takes a stroke, the blade goes in the water, and then he drives his legs as hard as he can drive his legs, and finishes swinging through with his arms and back, and then bends back out of bow, comes up on his slide, places the blade back in the water, and takes another stroke. And he does that at about 40 strokes a minute, which is a relatively high rating. This side of the boat over here is called a port side. Port side. In our boat, we're starboard stroke, which means that the starboard men are, who alternate with the port men, are a little closer to the stern. The bow man here is a port man. The two man is a starboard man. As we work our way down the boat, they alternate. So when you see a boat rowing down through the water, the oars overlap starboard port, starboard port, starboard port as they go down the boat. That's called standard rigging. Occasionally at UCLA and other racing powers, you'll see boats that are Italian rigged, where two people in the center of the boat row the same side, then they alternate away from that. We don't have any boats rigged like that in the race this weekend. Everybody's going to be standard rigged, which means that all the oars will alternate straight down the boat. There's a little bit more space here, as you can see, in the width of the boat in the center. And traditionally, your biggest, strongest men who are 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", will be in these middle four seats. A little more tightly coordinated, perhaps a little shorter man will be in the bow and two seats. And then maybe your best athletes, the most tightly coordinated athletes with the best rhythm, really hotly competitive people will sit down in the stroke and seven seats and work very closely with the coxswain. Let's move on down the boat. You can see that the interior structure of the boat is very light. This is aluminum, very light wood. If you were to step in the bottom of this boat, you'd go right through it. It's matchbox thin, matchbox thin. They're built to be just as light as they can be, all the way up, and just as strong as they can be at the same time. America's space-age technology has probably reduced the weight of these boats by 25% over the last 15 years. The moonshot required light materials, and strange as it may seem, those light materials found their way into the 8-oared racing shells, and now they're made of a carbon fiber material that's extremely strong, stronger than wood, and yet much lighter than wood. All of the seats are relatively the same. The oars are the same length. All the oars that the oarsmen use are 12 foot 6 inches long. Let's move on down here. I'll show you what the seat is that stroke and seven sit in. These two individuals, this is the first man on the port side, and this is first man on starboard side. In our boat, the stroke is a starboard oar. In, I believe in Cal Berkeley's boat, the first oar is a port oar. In Oxford, I'm not sure which side is stroking their boat. The coxswain sits in the seat and faces the stroke. And as you can see, very small opening here. In this black area that fits in the bottom here, the coxswain has a battery that goes in. The battery is connected through wires all the way down the boat, and there's a series of speakers that are under the seats, so that in the old days, you've probably seen pictures of coxswains with a little megaphone on, and they talk to the crew and yell, you know, and traditionally people think they yell stroke, 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 although they don't. Now they use electronics, and you'll see that the coxswains in the race will be hooked up with a microphone, and the only people who can hear the coxswain are the oarsmen.
Concentrate on that swing, nice and long. Keep them buried, starboard side.
It used to be in the old days when we rowed in heavier wooden boats and the coxswains used the manual megaphones, that everybody in all the other boats could hear what your coxswain was telling you about how he thought you were doing in the race where you were, who you were moving on, what rating you were rowing. But now we're much more sophisticated than that, and we've got these much lighter boats. Coxswains have electronic communication to the oarsmen. The oarsmen are tied in with these racing boots that have been developed in the last 10 years. And by and large, we've got what I would consider to be state-of-the-art racing equipment here at UCLA. And we have arranged for Oxford University to be rowing in the sister ship to this boat. It'll be exactly like this one. And that is the same boat that they've been rowing in back in England. So I think they're going to feel very much at home here at UCLA rowing in this Empacher.
Jim Sims, coach at UCLA, taking us on a tour of that shell. And David, to those of us not so nautically inclined, he used some terms that maybe we don't know there, such as port side and starboard side.
Well, and of course it's very relative because it depends upon which side you're looking at. It's the port side is the left side if you're facing forward. That's always true on a boat. The starboard side the same. The right side facing forward. So for the coxswain,
right.
The starboard side is the right side. For the oarsman, it's the oarsman's left side with him sitting down going the wrong way. The bow, of course, being the front, the stern or aft is the back of the shell. Empacher is a very famous boat, and it's the type of 8 that was used by all the finalists in the Olympic Games in '84. It's made in West Germany. An extremely fine boat. Cost about $12,000 a piece, so they're very expensive.
We now have the Riggers Cup race. This is the men's varsity 8 lightweight between the California Golden Bears and the UCLA Bruins. Cal won this event last year. David, when we say lightweight, heavyweight, what are the weight restrictions?
Good point. The lightweight averages 155 pounds. There's the start. Each oarsman has to be under 160, and the whole crew has to average 155 pounds. So every oarsman in this boat is under 160 pounds.
Cal starting out. UCLA leading. They set Cal starting out at 44 strokes, but UCLA at 45 strokes. And UCLA on the left side of your screen leading here at the start of this men's varsity 8 lightweight.
Exactly. Maybe not real surprising considering UCLA had a little better performance last weekend at the Crew Classic in San Diego than did the lightweight crew from Cal.
Let's take a look at who's in the boat for the men's varsity 8 lightweight between Cal and UCLA, and we'll have in the bow Mike Birchfield. In seat number 2, Eric Lonsway. Seat number 3 for UCLA, Dan Esters. In the 4th seat is James Hilliard. In the 5th seat, Eric Matsura. In seat number 6, Patrick Lynch. In the 7th seat, Derek Utter. The stroke is Glenn Lister, and the coxswain is Peter McCullough. That's for the UCLA Bruins. UCLA leading by about 5 seats right now over the Cal Golden Bears, and they are 1/4 through the race. They are at 500 meters right now, coming up to that orange marker. UCLA right now at 37 strokes per minute, and as we said, that slight lead over California. For the California Golden Bears, in the bow is Brad Johnson. Seat number 2, Mike Hurley. Number 3, James Vanderbilt. In seat number 4, Dan Hoskins. And in 5 is Steve Hammers. In seat 6 is Charles Griffin III. In the 7th oar position, Paul Comer. The stroke is Scott Brady, and the coxswain is Kim Nishiba. Now they're approaching the UCLA boathouse here, not quite halfway through the race, and UCLA still with that lead, David Grant.
Yes, they're doing a very nice job. The rates are a little higher than they would perhaps normally be because there's a fairly strong headwind, I guess 6 to 8 knots, tailwind here, so 6 to 8 knots following them down the course, so they can carry the rates just a little higher. Getting a fair amount of help from the breeze and from the tide. UCLA looking very nicely here and leading by about 3/4 of a length.
Now, excuse me, in a dual race like this, the boats are required to stay in their lanes, right?
That's correct. And they obviously are not taking any chances, the coxswains are not, because they're staying well away from each other, steering right down the banks on either side of Ballona Creek.
UCLA with about a half boat length lead over the California Bears right now, just about halfway through this 2,000-meter course. Now, what instructions would the coxswain be giving them right now? And his job is to steer the boat, but now what other instructions would he be
Certainly
giving?
that. The coxswain needs to be honest with the crew. He needs to tell them where they are, so there are no surprises. He needs to tell them now that UCLA has a length up on them, and if they're going to do anything, they better get at it, so that there are no illusions that they're even with UCLA or ahead of them. So he'll tell them to take a hard 10, a power 10. They may take the rate up a bit in an effort to catch UCLA. It's a bit risky to take the rate up this early in the race.
This is the men's varsity 8 lightweight race for the Riggers Cup. Cal won it last year, but UCLA is leading this year, and there's quite a crowd lining the banks here. It's hard to tell exactly how many, David, because they are stretched out so far along the course, but I would say several thousand people have turned out, and of course looking forward to seeing the Oxford crew race against UCLA and Cal. But this is the men's varsity 8 lightweight, and the UCLA Bruins on the left side of your screen are the leaders. UCLA's lead right now is 1 boat length, and they are coming up to 1,500 meters, which means 500 meters left to go in the race.
And that would mean, Bob, that with quality crews, pretty hard to make up a boat length in 500 meters. If you're overlapping, that's one thing, but with the open water that UCLA has, unlikely that Cal can catch them at this point.
We have talked so much about what the coxswain and what the stroke do. Now, what about the responsibility of the other rowers? Do they ever sneak a glance at the other crew, or is that strictly the coxswain's job?
Well, it really is the coxswain's job. I think most oarsmen have given into that temptation at one time or another just to make sure that the coxswain is telling them the truth, that they are where they say they are.
Still a 1 boat length lead for the UCLA Bruins. California now at 39 strokes a minute. UCLA at 37, so Cal trying to make a run for it here.
Exactly right. They've taken the rate up earlier than they normally would, but it's their only chance. It's now or never.
And as you can hear, Jeff Strand, the announcer who is announcing everyone on shore from a motorized launch out on the course. UCLA pulling away at 39 strokes as they near the finish line.
That boat is a carbon fiber boat, and UCLA is rowing it with a good deal of success here.
Nearing the finish line now, the men's varsity 8 lightweight for the Riggers Cup. The UCLA Bruins are going to win this race this year. Cal won it last year. Here's the finish line, and the UCLA Bruins have won the men's varsity 8, and by a pretty good margin too, David Graham.
That's exactly right. Cal was forced to take that rate up too early, and they began to slow down as they approached the finish rather than speed up.
So the Riggers Cup race goes to the UCLA Bruins, and the victorious Bruins and their coxswain exhausted but happy now at the end of 2,000 meters, and I think they led just about from start to finish.
That's exactly right. And of course, the coxswain's treat for steering them to victory is to be thrown into Ballona Creek in a matter of minutes. Seems not entirely fair, does it?
Not on a day like this,
No.
I can tell you that. So the UCLA Bruins are victorious in the men's varsity 8 lightweight, and we will be back with more action in the UCLA Classic in just a moment.
Discount tire stores are having a spring sale on Michelin because so much is riding on your tires. Now you can save up to 40% on Michelins. Discount tire stores will not be undersold. Hurry, save up to 40% now at Discount Tire Stores spring sale. Discount Tire Stores, we cut prices, not quality.
The legendary Buster Keaton made a silent film back in 1927 entitled College. Filmed in Southern California, the picture tells the tale of a guy, an honor student, who tries to impress a girl more interested in athletes. He's already failed miserably in baseball and track, now has a chance to redeem himself as a coxswain of the crew team. great Buster Keaton and David Grant, crew coach at Orange Coast College and a former coxswain. Were you a better coxswain than Buster Keaton?
Gosh, I don't remember having that as an exciting adventure, thank goodness.
Some of the crowd here. Delray, California. It's the UCLA Crew Classic, and we'll be right back after this message.
Aloha College Basketball Classic.
Our next race will be the women's varsity 8 heavyweight, and as we mentioned before, the rowing quality will get a little better now, and this will be the first time we've seen the women's varsity 8 heavyweight. And David, you were mentioning that for women, as Dudley Moore looks on, famed British actor, comedian, conductor, pianist, organist, and there he is, Dudley Moore, a alumnus of Oxford, and of course he has quite an interest in the race between Oxford and Cal and UCLA today. He is the MC of the race here today, so he is in communication with all of the fans that are lined along Bologna Creek here at Marina Del Rey and on the bridges, both at the ocean side and down at the east end of the course on Lincoln Boulevard. What I was mentioning, David, is that women apparently just recently extended their course to 2,000 meters. They used to roll half of that, 1,000 meters. Is that right?
Exactly right. The it requires somewhat different training for a good deal of different training for women to row the distance of 2,000 as opposed to 1,000. So it's a little different experience for them this year, and the rules changed last year, and it's a good change. I think all the women have looked forward to having the extra distance, the real distance to race.
Remember, we will be bringing you the feature race of the day between the Oxford Blue crew visiting the United States for only the second time in about 157 years. They will be rowing against Cal and UCLA. And of course, the Cal crew is so highly regarded in this country. It should be quite a race.
Particularly after their excellent showing at the Crew Classic last weekend in San Diego, finishing very close second to Pennsylvania.
So the women's varsity 8 heavyweight race is off. And do the women apply the same strategy now at the start of the race, David, as the men do?
Very similar. They will start again at the first 25, 30 strokes of the race very high at 43, 44, settle down after about the first minute of racing to 36, 37.
In the UCLA women's varsity 8 boat, in the bow is Julie Myers. Rowing in number 2, Tracy Lavelle. In number 3, Allison Gould. In the 4th seat is Barbara Fry. In the 5th seat, Mary Pat Gavel. Rowing number 6 is Kari Dunn. 7th is Dana Perkins. The stroke is Alicia de Villiers. And the coxswain is Jenny Lewis Jr. That's the UCLA Bruins crew, the women's varsity 8 heavyweight. Not quite to the 500-meter mark yet. UCLA crew on the left of your screen, and the University of California Golden Bears women's 8 on the right.
Cal appearing to have almost a half a boat length lead here, Bob, over UCLA, but they're just early into the race here now, so lots can happen.
When we say light, or when we say heavyweight for women, what are we talking about as far as...
As opposed to a lightweight over 155. So.
So the California Golden Bears crew with a lead to just past the 500-meter mark. And in that California boat, in the bow is Beth Mandel. Number 2 is Nevenka Pearson. In the 3rd seat is Sue Killebrew. Rowing number 4, Lee Wolfer. Number 5, Susie Campbell. In the 6th seat is Kristen Johnson. In the 7th is Donna Terry. The stroke is Allison Morales. And the coxswain is Constance Piper. University of California women's heavyweight 8 rowing very nicely now as they approach the UCLA boathouse. And as we have said before, we are situated not quite at the halfway mark. So they're coming upon about the 900-meter mark. And that California lead seems to be holding, David Grant.
Yes, and in fact, increased just a little there. They've got really a full length over UCLA now. Both crews rowing very nicely. Cal maybe just a touch higher than UCLA. The Cal coxswain has wandered out into the center of the course a bit there. Maybe has gone a little bit out of her way. A little further than she needs to. A foot out is a foot back, so it, don't want to give anything away there. You want to steer as straight down that course as you can get. She's wandered over toward the UCLA a bit.
What kind of training do these women go through? This really is a strenuous sport. I mean, when you roll 2,000 meters, you know you've done some exercise.
Well, that's right. Every time you move the blade through the water, you move roughly 90 pounds. So you've done a tremendous amount of work. You've moved 90 pounds roughly 35 times every minute for at least 6 minutes. So at the end of a 6-minute race, you've moved an enormous amount of weight. And of course, that's the easy part. The difficult part is doing it exactly together.
UCLA right now at 36 and a half strokes, trying to catch UCLA with a lead right now. I'm sorry, California's still ahead, three seats ahead.
Correct.
I thought Jeff Strand had said that UCLA had taken the lead.
Well, Jeff gets pretty excited. He might have.
California at 36 strokes, UCLA at 35 strokes per minute.
Hanging their weight on the oar very nicely.
California with about a 2-seat lead now, so UCLA has narrowed the gap by about 1 seat. Now they're back to a 3-seat advantage, and they are now 4 seats over UCLA. So now the California Golden Bears starting to move further ahead.
Now, it would be in Cal's best interest to have the rating slightly under UCLA, so they would understroke them, that is to save some energy for the final sprint for the finish. That would be Cal's strategy, to slightly understroke UCLA. Force UCLA to row higher.
500 meters to go, and right now, with the lengthened course for women, I'm sure this is where the conditioning really comes into play.
So they're beginning to feel that, I'm sure.
Rowing on Bologna Creek and Marina del Rey on a day that is overcast and windy and quite cool, but I'm sure at this point the rowers don't notice anything about those conditions.
They no doubt welcome that. They are going to have a fairly quick time on the course, given the wind rolling down Bologna Creek at 5 to 6 knots. It still is pretty calm, so they're not having any trouble with the water.
California Golden Bears. The leaders, and just about 300 meters left to go in this women's varsity 8 heavyweight race. UCLA trying to catch up. What about their style right now? They don't seem to be quite in sync.
Right, and you can see how critical that is. To have anybody out of phase really is to negate that person's work. So it's critical that everyone attack the water at the same moment and then let go of the water at the same moment. It's easy to talk about, not quite so easy to do with 8 people.
I can imagine. David Grant, the crew coach at Orange Coast College, our expert commentator here today. And we're nearing the end of the women's varsity 8 heavyweight race, and the Cal Golden Bear women are the leaders. And it doesn't look like UCLA is going to be able to catch up. Here's nearing the finish line, and the Cal Bears about almost a length lead now.
Full length lead. Yeah, here they go.
And that's the finish line, and the California women, University of California Golden Bears women's varsity 8 heavyweights, win this race in a dual race against the UCLA Bruins women.
Really a credible performance for both crews. Very nicely rowed.
So the races will continue at the UCLA Crew Classic right after these words. Men willing to sacrifice everything that's in them, with the prize being the right to uphold a tradition as valuable as any jewel in the United Kingdom. Remarkably, Oxford has no budget for sports, relying simply on a fee charged students to facilitate their endeavors. Cambridge, on the other hand, has a sponsor, Ladbrokes. They're a legalized bookmaker. But all is of little consequence when it comes to the boat race.
Are you ready? Go!
And so the 132nd University Boat Race is on its way to Mortlake. Cambridge on the Middlesex station. Oxford have the Surrey Bend in their advantage, but Cambridge now have to try to get a lead around this early Middlesex bend, the bend that's in their favour at the start. John Pritchard the stroke. And Cambridge have a slight lead at this point. They come past the boathouses now. Cambridge seem to be veering across towards the Surrey station. Mike Sweeney ordering Cambridge to move back.
With a mile completed, the story of a Cambridge victory began to unfold.
And we have the times at the mile. Cambridge have reached the mile in 3:39 and Oxford in 3:44. And that is only a few seconds outside the times last year. Cambridge are in fact 3 seconds slower at the mile than Oxford were last year.
Cambridge are now showing up 5 seconds in front. That will give them more than enough room to slide in front of Oxford as they come towards Hammersmith Bridge. They've got to maintain this lead, and Oxford have got to do all they can to shorten it. If they can't, if Oxford can't draw back on Cambridge, Cambridge will cut underneath the bank and take them along the calm water.
Approaching 2 miles, Oxford severely started losing ground. George Livingston, an American at Oxford, rowing in the 7th seat, talked about the grueling 4.5-mile experience.
It's like nothing, like no rowing I've done here in the United States. And unless you've actually competed in the boat race, it's very difficult thing to imagine. It's 4.5 miles on the Thames in London. Just outside of London. The conditions are incredible. This year, quite rough water with tides and currents inside where the coxswain has to find the right stream to get the fastest water. And it's a coxswain's dream because there's no lanes. You can cut in front of the other boat, do whatever you want to get to the finish line first. There's basically no rules, no holds barred.
It might be a coxswain's dream, but for Oxford, on this day, the agony and pain was growing more acute with each stroke of the oar.
Certainly Cambridge making the very best of their water and rowing nicely now. I'm often asked how hard physically is it actually rowing the boat race, and it's extremely hard to explain because of the pressures and the tensions of the race. But viewers might like to think about lifting a sack of potatoes weighing 56 odd pounds from their feet to their neck 34 times a minute for 18 minutes, and you get somewhere near the physical load that is imposed on these athletes. They are trained very hard and very long, but for a good purpose. This is a very tough race indeed.
After 3.5 miles, the Cambridge lead was insurmountable. And as they approached the finish line, it became just Cambridge against the clock.
As Cambridge, with their opponents always in sight, rowing steadily and easily all the way in these difficult conditions. Wonderful performance by Cambridge, which is going to lift morale at the university and is going to do the boat race a great deal of good. Look at the crowds behind on the bank there, waving Cambridge home. Memorable boat race.
At the end, it was Cambridge with a 21-second margin of victory, breaking a disheartening 10-year losing streak to Oxford. Oxford's coach, Daniel Topolsky, was asked what went wrong.
just never moved. The boat never went. We've won 10 years in a row. And this 11th race just did not go right at all. We had a lot of problems all through the year, but that wasn't really the reason that the boat didn't go. It never really picked up, and it didn't have the magic that you need to win the boat races.
The winners, confident, jubilant, and the glory of British boat racing once again on their side. The losers beaten and exhausted, and knowing they'll have a whole year to wait to reclaim their title on the Thames. One of the great crew races in the world, the most famous between Oxford and Cambridge on the River Thames. David Grant, crew coach at Orange Coast College. Have you ever been there in person for that race?
I've missed that race. I've got to do that one. That is, as you say, quite rightly, the most exciting race in the world, really.
Well, you know, Oxford is Britain's oldest university. They are welcomed here to Southern California for this race between Cal and the UCLA Bruins. They started crew in 1829 back there. It was the first collegiate sport, so they certainly have had enough experience to bring over here. And as we look around, they are going to have a typical British day, I think, viewing the conditions that they rode on the River Thames this year. As it was mentioned, high tides, high winds, rough water. The water's not going to be quite so rough here, but overcast skies, cool temperatures, and fairly brisk winds here today at Marina Del Rey.
They'll be right at home. They've got cool weather and a little bit of a following breeze. For them, of course, the course is very different. They have 4.5 miles of a river winding and turning, and here they have 2,000 meters, about a mile and an eighth. It's straight, no curves, no turns. It's strictly one crew against another, and not much room for tactics on the part of the coxswain.
I want to remind you, the UCLA Bruins are brought to you by Discount Tire Stores, offering you quality tires and service at discount prices. And by Maxell, manufacturers of premium audio and videotape. Maxell, the tape for sophisticated equipment. David, speaking of the length of the course, now Oxford rowing 4.5 miles in the race against Cambridge. Here they're rowing 2,000 meters. One would think that this is going to be easy for them because it's such a short distance, but that is not necessarily the case.
Exactly. The difference is considerable. Almost all of their races, of Oxford's races, are 3 to 4 miles or more, and consequently the training is a good deal different than you would train for a 2,000 meter race, which is just about a mile and an eighth. The rating here being much higher than it would be at home in England. By rating, I mean that the number of strokes per minute would be 36, 37 over this course, and probably a good deal lower at home in England for the longer distance course.
So in other words, if you compare it to, say, a track meet, would be like a miler dropping down to about the quarter mile.
That's exactly right. It would be a big change.
Mayor Bradley, mayor of Los Angeles, here at the UCLA Classic today, along with several thousand other fans that are lined up along Ballona Creek. And the mayor trying to keep warm here. Not a Chamber of Commerce day.
I don't think it's bothered the fans much, though. Rowing people are going to turn out in large numbers, and particularly I think there's a lot of people here who've never seen a rowing race before, so it's a great first experience for them.
Yes, and I think they're really excited and anticipating this feature race of the day. You know, since Oxford is used to rowing a 4.5 mile course, we asked their coach Daniel Topolsky about the difficulties in adjusting to a sprint race like today's 1.2 mile distance.
Coming from a 4.25 mile race, which we had with Cambridge 2 weeks ago, and changing to the sprint racing is quite a change. Usually take a month or two to get really geared up for the summer season's racing, and we're having to make those changes quite quickly. So through the winter you're doing the low beat, low rating type work, long distance work, and the summer season racing is very much high pressure, fractions of seconds separate the crews, and it's a different style of racing, different type of racing. So that change is probably the biggest change that we have to make.
Daniel Topolsky, the coach of Oxford, and a disappointed coach this year in that they had a 10 4-year winning streak over Cambridge, and that came to an end this year.
Well, I think the important thing is to look at the larger program. Daniels had a remarkable record, and so has the Oxford crew, so nothing to be ashamed of. Getting very close to the start here, as you saw in the earlier film clip, that was the start was said, starter said, get ready, go. Here they will use the French commands, êtes-vous prêt, partez.
Just about 30 seconds away now from the start of this feature race of the day, the men's varsity 8 heavyweight race between Oxford, UCLA, and Cal. We talked quite a bit about Oxford, but Cal has been the most successful American collegiate crew down through the years.
Well, they've done awfully well, particularly with their showing last week at the Crew Classic in San Diego, coached by Tim Hodges. He's done an excellent job with that crew. They're an extremely fine crew, and I think they'll show that in a few minutes.
And the UCLA team has a first-year coach in Jim Sims.
That's right, and some very, very fine oarsmen in that boat. I know a couple of the seniors are excellent oarsmen, and I think they'll have a very creditable performance.
UCLA squad has 5 seniors, 1 junior, but they say they're relatively untested, and the race is underway, the feature race of the day, the men's varsity 8 heavyweight race. UCLA starting out at 44 and Oxford at 42. For UCLA in the bow, Richie Satch. In number 2, Simon Althwaite. Number 3, Chris Muller. Number 4 is Mark Klein, the captain. Number 5 is Mike Still. Number 6, Chris Hirth. Number 7, Scott Mahaffey. The stroke is Rich Rosinkus, and the coxswain, Jeff Aiken. UCLA Bruins. For the Oxford Blue in the bow, Hugh Pelham. Number 2, Gavin Screeton. Number 3, Bruce Phillip, the captain. Number 4 is Don McDonald. Number 5 is George Livingston. In the 6th seat is Matt Thomas. In the 7th seat is Tony Ward. The stroke is Fran Rettinger, and the coxswain, Andy Laubenberg. The Oxford Blue. They're not quite yet to the 500-meter mark. And Oxford did start out a couple of strokes per minute less than UCLA.
Very close boat race here. Very close boat race. Cal with just a seat out.
Flowing together. Flowing as one. Let's get up on Cal now.
You hear the voice of the coxswain there. For the California Bears varsity 8 in the bow is Steve Esslinger. In number 2 seat, Stuart Huntington. Number 3 is Sam Hobbs. In the 4 seat, Tom McKinney. In the 5 seat is Brock Brunt. Number 6, Damon Anastas. Number 7, Jim Smith. The stroke, Chip McKibben. And the coxswain, Tony Venegas. And listen to the coxswain exhort them on now as they reach the boathouse. Here's the UCLA coxswain.
Cal moving very smartly. Having taken a power of 10 here, moved out to about 3/4 of a boat lead. Very nicely rowed here.
Stretch it, Cal's trying to slip away.
That's the voice of Jeff Aiken, the coxswain.
Throw more pull around. Rate's gonna come down 1. On this one, you really hammer now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pick the boat out of the water. 7, 8. We gotta make up a length now. 9, 10.
All right, Jeff Aiken, the coxswain for UCLA, and that was excellent audio there of his commands to his rowers.
Yeah, you get a good sense of just what the oarsmen hear in that. The coxswain trying to tell them where they are on the course, trying to be encouraging to the oarsmen, trying to let them know where they are in relation to the other boats and what has to be done between now and the finish.
California Golden Bears, you just saw them. They are in the lower right-hand side of your screen. Oxford is in the middle, UCLA on the left-hand side. And they have just reached the halfway mark, 1,000 meters, as the Oxford Blue moving ahead and trying to win over here in the United States against Cal and UCLA. Oxford using a shell loaned to them by a sportsman in the Bay Area. back and hear more of the coxswain's commands. UCLA's Jeff Aiken. UCLA is using a new shell. That's a 200-pound carbon fiber. They purchased that from the New Zealand team that won a bronze medal in the 1984 Olympics. Oxford right now taking a hard 10. They're falling back a little bit, David.
Yes, I maybe even more accurate to say that Cal has just moved away here. Cal rowing very nicely, clearing their puddles. You can see the stroke by the time he makes the catch is a good 8 feet ahead of the two-man's puddle there. So he's very much in control here.
Cal overall has won 15 national titles, a record unmatched by any other collegiate crew.
You notice the stroke here is on the starboard side, on the right side facing forward. That's a little different than we've seen earlier in the day.
Cal won gold medals at 3 separate Olympic Games back in 1928, 1932, and 1948. And they would be favored, I suppose, along with Washington in the Pac-10 this year.
You'd be exactly right. That's going to be a great race between Cal and Washington.
Mayor Tom Bradley viewing this race as the crews are now nearing the finish of this race at the end of 2,000 meters. Cal and Oxford almost dead even, I believe he said. That's right. UCLA and Oxford.
Cal very much in control. They're coasting home at this point.
Cal the leader, and then UCLA and Oxford battling to see who's going to finish second in this feature race. Cal really has the open water between them and the other two boats right now, and that's the finish line as the California Golden Bears. And for second place, photo finish, I guess is
photo
what you call it.
finish. That was close. That was a close race.
For the Maury Grossman Cup, the California Golden Bears are the winners.
Good performance from Cal.
California Golden Bears, the winners over Oxford and UCLA, and quite a battle for second place. That was where the real race was, because Cal just moved out. It seemed to me, David, right after about the 500-meter mark is when they started to make their move, or as they came by the boathouse here.
You're quite right. At 500, they made their move, and then they were able to just keep the rating below everybody else and control the race. So you're quite right. They controlled the race all the way through, and that's the way to do it.
Coach Tim Hodges, California Golden Bears, successful in the race for the Maury Grossman Cup, as this was the feature race of the day, and perhaps a few disappointed people over the showing of Oxford, but I guess you would say that Oxford's crew this year not quite as strong as crews in the past. Now the battle for second place, as we mentioned, came right down to the finish line, and on our freeze frame here, David, looked like perhaps UCLA just inching ahead. It kind of depends on the angle.
It's whoever takes the last stroke there. I'd get pretty close to a dead heat on that one.
UCLA did get second. You can hear from the crowd reaction.
How about that? Well, good for them.
So Cal wins, UCLA second, and Oxford is third. The feature race of the day, the winners.
I think it was particularly impressive for UCLA to be right there. That was so close. At Henley, they would have called that a dead heat, but I thought it was a great credit to UCLA to be right next to Oxford. Very, very fine performance, and obviously Cal is an extraordinarily fine crew.
We mentioned that Cal kind of made their spurt right after 500 meters in a 2,000-meter race. Did you feel that was maybe a little early for them or not?
That was a smart move on their part to establish their position in the race, and once established, they could control the race from then on, kept the rating at slightly below what the others were, and managed to simply be the observers of the race from the front position. So it was a smart move on their part to establish themselves early on.
Much easier to row from out there than from behind, right?
It's a nice position to look back, and that's right.
We had the times. You mentioned how close that second place finish was. The winner, Cal, was timed in 5:43, and then both crews had the same time in the battle for second place. UCLA and Oxford both in 5 minutes and 50 seconds. So the winners of the Maury Grossman Cup, the California Golden Bears, and we'll be back with their post-race comments and program in just a moment.
This is the UCLA Bruins Wrap-Up Show, brought to you by your Toyota dealer, who has a full line of 1986 trucks and vans. More power, more payload to do more work. Who could ask for anything more?
This is Bob Miller back at Marina Del Rey at Bologna Creek, where the California Golden Bears are the winners of the Maury Grossman Cup, the UCLA Crew Classic. A tight finish for second, almost a photo finish. In fact, it was a photo, but UCLA in about the last 3 strokes took second place over the Oxford University crew from Great Britain. So the California Golden Bears are the winners of the Maury Grossman Cup, and we'll be talking with the coach of the California Bears, Tim Hodges, in just a few moments. We'll be right back here with the UCLA Crew Classic from Marina Del Rey right after these words.
Who's ready to unchain the only gas turbo 4x4 truck in America? Who's ready to unleash pure horsepower and pulling power? Who's ready to beat up a mountain and muscle its way to the top? Toyota is who. The 1986 Toyota 4x4 Turbo with high-track independent front suspension for even more comfort. It's the who's who in 4x4s. Who could ask for anything more? Toyota.
Right now by the coach of the winning crew, the California Golden Bears, Tim Hodges. Coach, congratulations. That was a fine victory.
Thanks very much, Bob. We're really pleased to be here today.
Now, you seem to have quite an easy time winning that race. Did it go according to the way you thought it might?
Well, nothing this week really went according to plan. We have been plagued with chicken pox. Last night at our practice, the 7-man in our varsity broke his ankle in the warm-up run. We had to put in a substitute at the last minute. We've had another injury. It's just been a wild week, but I'll tell you, it's a tremendous day for collegiate rowing, international collegiate rowing.
Well, it's certainly a tremendous day for California collegiate rowing because UCLA got second place. We were commenting that your crew seemed to make their move just maybe a little bit after the 500-meter mark is where you looked to us like you started to pull away. Was that a little early, or did you plan it that way?
Actually, we planned to make a significant move around the 1,000-meter mark, the midpoint in the race. I felt comfortable when I saw that the crew was ahead at the 750-meter mark here at the boathouse. At the 1,000, we lengthened our lead a little bit, and I think we're comfortable in the last half of the race.
It was kind of a question mark, I guess, this year, whether you were going to be in a rebuilding program or whether this crew from Cal was really going to come on and take control, and it looks now like you've got to be very pleased with your progress.
Absolutely. I think the character of the crew was reflected in the race today with this injury and the various problems we've had this week. We only have 3 returning varsity oarsmen in the crew this year. One of them was the injured man, so just 2 in that boat. And they rode that race with a lot of poise and all this hoopla down here. They handled it very well and rode a real strong race. I think we've got a good season to look forward to, although you can never look past the Huskies from University of Washington and some of the other strong competition we face.
I think the Oxford crew brought the British weather with them today. We thought maybe that would favor them. Did the conditions obviously didn't hamper Cal? What about some of the other crews? Did you feel that it hampered Oxford or UCLA at all?
No, I think these conditions were just fine. It's a tailwind. It's a comfortable. There's not a huge amount of chop, and you got to remember we're from the Bay Area, so this is no stranger to us.
Well, Tim, you mentioned it's been a great day for crew here. Thousands of people lining the bank of Bologna Creek at Marina Del Rey, and I think they got to look at some of the finest crews in this country and in the world, and it was nice for Oxford to come over here even though they did get beat. Congratulations to you and the Cal Bears.
Thanks very much, Bob. We're really glad to be here. Thanks very much.
Tim Hodges, the coach of the California Golden Bears Crew Classic at Marina Del Rey, and let's take a look at the results of today's events. In the men's heavyweight novice eights, the winner, the Cal Bears, in 6:03, UCLA second in 6:07. In the men's heavyweight freshman eights, The winner, UCLA Bruins 5:59.8, followed by Cal 6:09. In the men's heavyweight second varsity eights, the winner, University of California at Berkeley in 5:57.9, and UCLA second in 5:58.5. The men's lightweight varsity eights, won by UCLA in 6:05.7, second place Cal in 6:14.5. In the women's varsity eights, the winner, University of California at Berkeley in 6:46.5, UCLA second in 6:49.5. In the men's varsity fours, a three-boat race featuring a combination of Oxford and UCLA rowers as well as Cal and UCLA. The winners, the combination boat, Oxford and UCLA in 6:57.5, Cal second in 7:02.5, and no time for UCLA. And in the feature race of the day for the Maury Grossman Cup, the men's heavyweight varsity eights, the winner, the California Golden Bears in 5:43, and it's the same times, and yet UCLA was given second place, UCLA and Oxford in 5:50.0. So David Grant, the crew coach at Orange Coast College, what kind of an indication can we get out of this victory by Cal today as to just how strong the Cal crew is going to be? It seems like Oxford maybe is down a little bit this year.
Looks to be also a very different distance for Oxford to row, so very difficult for them to go from 4¼ mile racing to 2,000-meter racing. But not to take away anything from Cal, really a brilliant performance on their part, particularly considering that they had a man out with chicken pox this week and a man with a broken ankle yesterday, and to be able to put together a boat like this at the last minute, very impressive.
David, I'm sure you're happy, and everybody connected with crew very happy about this race today, the exposure, the turnout of the fans, and it can do nothing but enhance crew in Southern California.
Probably the best thing that's happened to rowing in a long time. And rowing is going to grow in this country, and it certainly is in need of that. It's events like this that will encourage young people to be involved in rowing before they get to college, and that's going to make a lot of difference to Olympic caliber rowing.
And it is pure amateurism with good grade point averages that all of these oarsmen have to have, and oarswomen, to compete in this sport.
Well, quite right. I think on virtually every campus that I know of that has rowing, crew is at the top of the list in terms of quality academic work.
David, you were a big help to me. I appreciate that. And in the true tradition of crew, you were a coxswain. I get to throw you into Bologna Creek, right?
I'm not sure if I'd live through that creek.
David, thank you very much. Nice working with you. So, the winners of the UCLA Crew Classic, the California Golden Bears. This is Bob Miller. Thanks for being with us. Goodbye, everybody.
This has been the UCLA Bruins Wrap-Up.